What's up, YouTube? Mr. Llama here, and today I want to talk about patch 0.1.1, which is going to be coming out later this week. Now, this was announced recently by Jonathan and the GGG team, and it looks like they're trying to address a lot of, and this doesn't just look like it, this is what they said, they're trying to address a lot of changes that they can make pretty quickly that aren't going to be overall requiring a new economy, requiring everything to shift up and nerf builds and all sorts of stuff and do a lot of balance change, but rather just stuff that they can make changes to overall very quickly to improve the game. So let's go ahead and go through a little bit of the notes. So starting off, they were talking about endgame mapping, and they're going to basically just be improving it and trying to make it more rewarding overall. They said in the later interviews, so they had like a small video, and then later they had an interview with Darth and Gazzy where they talked through a lot more. And in that, they said they're looking to make like 30% more monsters appear, but they also said they're trying to improve chests and rares and essences and strong boxes and just everything to make the maps a little bit more rewarding, which I do think is great because I do feel like they didn't feel rewarding, right? They felt a little bland and boring to me, and so I'm hoping that this does improve them a little bit. I think there's some other changes that I'll talk through here in a second that are going to help it as well. So additionally within it, more maps are now going to spawn with bosses. They said they wanted it to be like 1 in 4 maps, but many maps couldn't spawn bosses, so it actually was way less than that. So now they're increasing the rates. There will be more bosses just overall on maps, which is great because, again, I think that was one of the big things for me was I didn't love that the bosses were just so few and far between. I also didn't love that it felt like, you were chasing around looking for the rares. I don't think that was really addressed. Correct me if I'm wrong. But it doesn't seem like that part is addressed. So when there's not the boss and you're just trying to find the rares, but you accidentally missed the one way over there, you got to chase all the way back. I didn't hear that piece, or I missed it if he talked about that further on in the interview. So that part is a little disappointing to me. That's something that I do think I hope that they would address a little bit more, because it's a little annoying to have to backtrack all the way through. Again, kind of feels like in Diablo 4 when I'd have to do all the backtracking, and I just got tired of it on the maps. Additional things that they are looking at doing, they're adding a tablet so you can add bosses to maps. I think that's also cool. Again, just trying to increase the bosses on maps. And they added 4 more tower maps in addition to redoing the existing tower, which I don't think solves the problem. Because right now, when I want to do a tower, I just pick a trash map, I throw it in there, and I run to the end. And that's it. There are no additional mechanics on a tower, and until that changes, I don't think this is going to change. I think towers should be almost just removed in the earlier pieces. Just make them a boss fight, or make it so you still rush through it if you want, whatever, but at the end there's a boss fight. And then you can also have more to the tower where it influences, the area around it. You can choose if you want it to influence with more delirium or more ritual or whatever you want. Like there's plenty of ideas they can have there, but the tower itself, I think, needs to have a boss at the end. I really think there needs to be the tower bosses that you go and you fight, and they're just at least like fun to go through. Because again, right now, without mechanics being able to be added to the towers, you just grab whatever trash you have, throw it in, and rush to the end. And if you give me 4 more different tower maps, it's just 4 more maps for me to rush to the end on. So I don't think towers are going to be fixed. I think that's still going to be kind of boring. And I hope that they continue to look at that. Additionally, they are improving, this is out of the end game kind of piece there, but just in general, they're improving visibility, which I think is actually really nice. So the strong boxes are going to be faster on their mobs and have less fog. That's one of the visibility changes, which, like, thank God, I don't need to wait a minute for a strong box to spawn. Additionally, and this one I'm going to actually do a visual show, they have improved the visibility for endgame, because there were a lot of, or not just endgame, but all over, because they said there was a lot of clutter, especially in maps. And then some effects wouldn't even show. Like, it would be an explosion, death effect, whatever it was, but it wouldn't render. And so you wouldn't see it, and it would just happen. So now they said they're making them more visible. Those will always render. And then they're going to make elemental explosion effects be more visible, stick around for longer before exploding, and disappear if the rare monster dies before they explode.
Now, let's talk about visibility
and
of
here
effects.
He talks about
Many
this.
maps had too much clutter,
right,
preventing effects on the ground from rendering.
And here, like, that's insane that it couldn't render. But here we can see, like, so much.
Able to see and dodge them.
Really do like.
Both changed the level of clutter on some maps and has changed some effects to make sure that they are always visible.
Like, that looks so much better.
Elemental explosion effects have had visibility improved. Stick around for longer before they explode, and disappear without exploding if a rare monster dies.
I mean, that just seems better. like the look of that is just so much better, being able to clearly see, the explosion circles, all this stuff. I think that's 10 times improved. So I like that. I would still say the one thing that I dislike is having like post-death explosions exist. And I think they said if the rare monster dies before they explode, then they're going to remove that elemental explosion effect. But I still think there's going to be explosions after death when you go into loot. If I'm not mistaken, maybe I'm misunderstanding it. And if that's the case, I still dislike that. It just feels like really tiring and anti-fun to anytime you kill something to have to always remember, do I need to wait a few seconds before I go in and loot? It's just like an artificial time ad that I don't feel like needs to be in the game. So if this is fixed, ignore me. But if not, I'd say please consider just removing these on death, post-death kills and explosions, because they're very tiring to me. I dislike them. Yeah, but otherwise, great visibility improvements. Very much appreciate those, because that was one of my biggest complaints. Was sometimes it just felt super unfair when you die. You'd be like, I couldn't even see it. Like, there's no way to even tell that was going to explode. Okay, next we have the Atlas. So the Atlas zoom level has been improved. I actually think this is fantastic. We can see right here, like, oh my goodness, the Atlas zoom has improved. And they said they're going to improve the load times of the Atlas and the world map, which is great. And then they are going to give us...
First, we're making the Citadel spawn closer to the center of the Atlas.
Spawning closer to the Atlas and having a fog of war way to see it, right?
We've also added an effect so you can see them in the fog of war from further away. This makes them much...
Oh my god. You know how many people are going to go look at their maps and see how many that they just barely missed? Like, there's going to be citadels and you just were weaving your way through them. So this is a fabulous change, because, again, this goes with the pinnacle content just being kind of annoying to try and go find. And it was like, people were really disappointed. It was like, okay, I go to find pinnacle content and I finally get there after, spending all this time running around, and then I die one time and that's it. And now I have to go run around again. And it was a horrible thing. So this is the first thing they're doing to improve that. Additionally, they are increasing the number of respawn attempts for the Arbiter of Ash. They said only for Arbiter of Ash right now, but they are going to be increasing it for future pinnacle content as well. And it'll be up to 6 respawn attempts, and then less per the higher difficulty. So the higher the difficulty, the less respawn attempts, with the idea being that as you play through it more, you don't need to learn the mechanics as much, so you can have fewer attempts, respawns, right? I think this is good, not great. And the reason I say not great is they're applying this to the pinnacle content, but they're not applying this to just maps in general. So they're still sticking to the idea that you get one and done in your maps, which I think is still pretty brutal for a lot of people. And maybe their thought is they're adjusting a lot of other things and toning down a lot of monsters and making things like feel better and more balanced and trying to buff armor. And with all of this, you won't die as often, and so it won't be as frustrating. But I feel like for many people, there's still just a lot of frustration with there only being one portal or one life essentially per map. And so I think that I hope that they continue to look at that. And additionally, I really hope they look at it in party play, because right now for party play, it just kind of absolutely sucks, right? Like there's almost no reason, it feels like, to do end game with party, unless you're just playing like hardcore and it's like, well, if we die, that's it. Because right now, if somebody dies, they just have to like wait outside of the map while the other person goes and finishes it. And there, you can't revive. There's no way to like get them back in it. It's just that happens. And that's kind of just a complete buzzkill for party play, right? Like if I'm playing with my friend and we start the map and pretty early on I die and it's like, okay, well now I just wait, or do you have to like end the map and come with me, or like I think that's a big buzzkill, and so I could see a lot of people just saying, why am I doing party play in this later stage, unless they're god gamers or playing hardcore or whatever it is there. So just something to note, and something again I hope they think about with the map changes and everything there. Let's see. Other pieces, they said that they improve some terrain collisions. With the leagues, Delirium, they did a bug fix for monsters not always spawning, and then increased drop rate for simulacrums. Ritual, omens will appear more often in the tribute window, and Expedition, there's going to be improved rarity in the shops. They want to do more with Expedition later on, but that's just kind of what they're doing now. Item changes, they said unique items are kind of underwhelming. They want to buff a lot of uniques and make them better for lower levels. And I think this is a good idea, because when I was playing through the game, like uniques kind of have their place in the end game with your builds and stuff. But when I was just like playing through, I think I used like one of the uniques that I found. And I found tons of uniques in the campaign, but they just were like not great, right? They just, it was like, this isn't ever really usable here, just on the way. So they've improved them and made them better there, and I'm curious to see all the changes that they made and what they really feel like. They showed a little picture with some of the stuff, but that was, just a few. I'm sure there's a lot more that they've changed there as well. They also fixed a bug that was making high tier items cull the highest tier modifier of a given mod type. So he said T5 bows and tier 5 rings couldn't spawn attack speed on the bows and life on the rings, which was just brutal. So they got rid of that. And the biggest change that I would say, the greatest change with items, is sockets can be overwritten. So we finally convinced them that having sockets just be stuck with whatever you put in it wasn't great, wasn't fun. So now you can go in and you can actually overwrite a socket and, okay, change my cold res to light res or whatever it is I want to put in there. Thank God. So that's huge. Otherwise, they said large numbers of monsters and bosses got adjusted. They removed a lot of the like off-screen detonate dead explosions and meteors and stuff that were killing you. So that's all good, because again, deaths in these games are good. Like deaths in ARPGs are good to have. You want to be hard. You don't want to just walk in and nothing can kill you in any of that. But you want them to be fair, right? Like you want to die and say, oh, okay, that's, like I saw that and I should have done this, but I didn't, and that's why I died. When you get just like insta-gibbed by something off screen and stuff, you're just like, well, this isn't fun. That sucks. So the more off-screen things and post-death or on-death explosion things that are removed, the better. The more fun the game will be, I promise. Next, or last big thing I would say with items is item filters for consoles are here as well. I'm not a console player personally, but I saw the screenshots that console players were posting, and the entire screen was filled with loot and there was no way to filter it. It's better. So that is fantastic that they're adding those in. Go get those if you play on console. It'll just be huge. And then they did say that they're looking at armor buffs again. When in the dev talk, they talked about it being about like 15%. I don't think this is going to be enough. I don't think this is going to help enough because there was a topic brought up by Entity Black 1 showing and proving, at least in his case, that armor is applied to elements before resistances, not like in Path of Exile 1 where it's applied after resistances. So when you apply armor before resistances, that means it's just getting completely eaten and burned away by giant elemental damage. And then, the damage goes to your res and whatever, and then you just take tons of damage still. So the armor is doing like absolutely nothing in that case. And just another way of showing that like armor kind of sucks right now and is not in a great spot, which it does, and it doesn't feel great. And that's one of the multitude of issues that Melee, is kind of facing, right? If you just want to be like a big tanky warrior, it's like, good luck. You're just going to still get absolutely wrecked. And stacking armor doesn't seem like it's really doing anything here. So if that is truly the case, that needs to be addressed. Armor should definitely be applied after resistances. And I do think they need to really look at the idea of, hey, if you want to have a warrior who attacks really slowly, has 3 to 4 seconds for his windups on his terrible mace skills and things like this, which doesn't really work well in a game where everybody's flying all around and by the time your attack goes to land, the boss is on the other side, and like there's a lot of frustration with Melee. But if you want him to at least be this big, tanky, bulky guy, make him really so you can build him tanky. Make it so the armor can work. And then, of course, in addition to this, they need to address HP versus ES, because right now ES is just like so much stronger. And actually kind of functions and works there. And life builds, you just still get shot, right? You're just dead. So they need to still really take a look at this. This is something they talked about a little bit for future patches with like warrior and mace and all of that. I think this is, a bigger problem than a quick fix, right? And they are recognizing that. So that'll probably be coming, I would imagine, in the next like league launch. Which is probably going to, like the economy reset and everything there, which is probably at least a month to 2 months away before we see changes like that. But hopefully they at least kind of see that and see that armor is also a part of that problem and needs a lot more than, in my opinion, just like a 15% buff. I think there needs to be some additional stuff added to it. It needs to have some base defense, whatever, right? There needs to be something else there to go with it, on top of fixing where it applies with resistances. Pieces not really discussed. An auction house or a trade house there. I would love to have that brought into the game. Right now, like, trading is tedious and unfun, and I don't want to go to a browser to do it, and DMing people and just waiting 5 hours to see who gets back to me, if they do, or nobody wants to trade anything that's worth under 1 div anymore. And, it's just like, it's not a good experience. Like, trading is just not in a good place right now. So I really hope that they take a look at that and, again, kind of bring it into the game, make it better, make it more accessible, make it more fun. And there's multiple ways to do it, and it depends what their philosophy is on it. If they want a trade house to be something where both players need to actively be engaged right there, as opposed to just putting it up with the buy it now price, or, it's an auction, whatever. But just having it, I don't like it being off on a website and then DMing and doing all the stuff that the way it currently is doesn't work, in my opinion. And I think I've seen for many newer players, they've claimed that it's like a massive turnoff for them. They're like, I don't understand it. And it's not something like I can't do any trades. I can't figure it out very well because I'm, just sending PMs and then they're taking the item down and it's confusing. So, I think they need to really like rework that. And, I think that kind of covers a lot of the main pieces. The last I mean, they talked about a bunch of various things, but that kind of covers a lot of the base stuff coming in this patch. The last thing I was going to say is they talked about the hacks that were going on. Somebody basically social engineered their way into an old Steam account that connected to an admin panel. They got into the admin panel, and then they were logging into people's accounts, changing the password, stealing the items, and then removing a note that they were changing the passwords. And it was a whole thing. They figured out a whole system. So there was that going on. I think there was some other stuff also happening that they didn't talk about, but that is something that they addressed. Just a small note to add at the end. It's pretty interesting. I'll leave a little link to his whole description because it's kind of like he's very open, very transparent, probably too transparent about everything that happened. But it's also kind of funny. You can tell he's really mad about it. Which, you know, I would be too, but his frustration definitely comes through when he explains it all and stuff. So it's interesting at the very least. I'll leave that link down below for you guys to watch. But anyways, that is coming up in patch 0.1.1 later this week sometime. Again, I'm overall positive about this patch. I mean, I think they really came in and addressed a lot of things quickly, getting back from the holidays. I do think there's still some changes to be made. And I think, you know, stuff like the towers and things, they'll see that, right? They'll come in, they'll put these in, and they'll be like, oh, people still hate towers. It's still not fun. We need to do some more. And hopefully get that stuff fixed. Maybe put some bosses, maybe do some stuff. But, you know, maybe adding a whole boss in, if it's specific for the towers, will be a whole other task. You know, who knows, right? But that is all we have. So don't forget to like and subscribe, YouTube. I will see you guys next time. Peace, everybody.